Picture this. You're sitting on your couch reading a book, just minding your own business. The house is completely quiet.
Right, setting the scene.
Yeah, exactly. But your dog is standing rigidly near the edge of the living room carpet. Their ears are pinned straight up, pivoting like little radar dishes.
Oh, I know this exact look.
And that thick, fluffy double coat is lifted just a millimeter along their spine. Their eyes are absolutely locked onto the dark hallway. You didn't hear a thing, but, maybe a floorboard settled or a car door shut 3 houses down.
The hyper-observant spitz in action.
Yes. Suddenly it happens. You get that sharp, piercing bark. The dog spins toward the perceived threat, shoots a rapid-fire glance back at you to confirm that you, the slow human, also heard the alarm.
Because of course we didn't.
Right. And then they bark twice more and just bolt onto the back of the sofa to get a higher vantage point.
It is a sequence of events that unfolds in roughly 10 seconds. And really, anyone who has ever lived with a small spitz breed, like a Pomeranian, knows that precise sequence by heart. It's almost choreographed.
It really is.
Yeah.
And in that frantic minute of chaotic activity, it is so incredibly easy to look at your dog and think, well, my dog is being a tiny problem right now.
Oh, absolutely. They seem broken or stubborn or just really annoying.
Exactly. But the mission for our deep dive today is to completely reframe that perspective for you. You aren't watching a tiny problem. You are watching a miniature spitz companion process the world at an incredibly high speed. They are behaving exactly as their ancient genetics are telling them to.
And to be fair to you, the listener, the frustration you feel is entirely valid. When your quiet living room suddenly turns into a high alert security zone, it spikes your own cortisol.
Oh, definitely. The jump scare alone is enough.
Right. But the fundamental distinction we have to make today is recognizing the difference between a dog that is simply operating on its historical breed instincts and a dog whose behavior is actually a distress signal communicating anxiety or discomfort.
So understanding what's driving the behavior.
Exactly, because if we can unpack the underlying psychology and the mechanics of how your dog's mind works, you can step into the role of a guide rather than finding yourself constantly reacting to their chaos.
Well, since we just described that classic living room alarm scenario, we naturally have to look at the loudest, most visible piece of that puzzle, which is the barking itself.
The main event.
Right. It feels like they are just making noise to make noise. But there's a mechanical reason behind it. Why are they firing off that alarm? And more importantly, how are our very human, intuitive reactions actually throwing fuel on the fire?
So we have to look at the historical wiring of the Spitz family. These dogs were bred for centuries to be watchdogs.
Like guarding the property.
Well, not necessarily guard dogs that attack, but alert dogs. Their brains are quite literally optimized to notice environmental shifts rapidly. They have these hyper-observant nervous systems.
So they notice everything.
Everything. They catch the faint scrape of a shoe on the porch, sudden changes in light, or even another dog walking a block away.
But it's not strictly a security alert every time, is it?
No, it's not. Because their arousal levels spike so quickly, that barking mechanism also gets triggered by frustration, sudden excitement, or simply because barking has proven to be a highly effective tool for getting what they want in the past.
I always think of that first sharp bark as a security system doing exactly what it was installed to do. But then as owners, our immediate instinct is to shout, "Quiet," or "No bark," from the other room.
Which is the worst thing you can do.
Right. I mean, if the dog is a security alarm, yelling at them feels like turning on a blaring siren to try and quiet the alarm. You are just dumping more noise and more chaotic arousal into a situation where the dog is already overstimulated.
That analogy maps perfectly onto their neurochemistry. When you shout, you aren't communicating, calm down.
Yeah.
From the dog's perspective, you are joining in on the alert.
Like I'm barking with them.
Exactly. You are validating their panic by matching their frantic energy with your own elevated volume. But there's an even more insidious trap, which is the instinct to scoop the dog up.
Oh, the scoop. I see this all the time.
Right. A 10-pound dog starts barking at the window, and the owner walks over, picks the dog up, and holds them to soothe them or physically move them away from the trigger.
Because we think we are containing the situation. We physically remove the dog from the window, which in our human brains means we've solved the problem.
The human logic makes sense, but canine operant conditioning tells a completely different story.
How so?
When you pick up a barking spitz, you are inadvertently delivering a massive reinforcement payload. You're handing them a paycheck for sounding the alarm.
Oh, wow. So we're rewarding the freakout.
Completely. In that moment of elevation, you provide them with your undivided attention, physical closeness, and Crucially, you give them a physical vantage point that empowers them. You've just made them taller and closer to the threat.
They learn very quickly that barking at the window summons the human elevator. I do want to push back on this a little, though. If their entire ancestry and nervous system are built around being hyper-observant watchdogs, isn't trying to train them to be totally silent, essentially fighting thousands of years of biology.
Oh, 100%.
It just feels like we're setting them up to fail if our goal is zero barking.
And you are hitting on the core philosophy of ethical training here. The goal is never suppression. Trying to create a perfectly silent robotic spitz is an impossible and frankly unfair standard.
So what's the actual objective?
Emotional regulation. You want a dog that notices a change in the environment, barks once or twice to perform its historical job, and then successfully downregulates its nervous system back to a calm state.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
And to achieve that, you implement what's known as a recovery routine.
I'm guessing this routine isn't just ignoring them until they give up, because from my experience, that usually just leads to more intense barking. How do we actively guide that downregulation?
It requires a deliberate three-step communication loop. First, you acknowledge the alert. You walk over, look at what they are barking at, and calmly let them know, message received, I see the mail carrier.
So you actually validate the threat for them.
Yes. Second, you redirect their attention away from the trigger. You might call them to their mat or ask for a simple behavior like a sit or a touch.
And the third step?
The critical step. You reward the dog the precise moment they settle and give you quiet focus. You aren't punishing the alarm. You are actively teaching them where the off switch is located.
Okay, so if picking them up for barking is inadvertently teaching them to be the loud, demanding security guard, we really have to look at the other accidental lessons we're building into their daily lives.
Oh, there's so many.
Because they are smart. They are learning constantly, which makes me rethink this whole concept of small dog syndrome that gets thrown around at the dog park all the time.
While Pomeranians and other miniature Spitz breeds possess remarkable cognitive plasticity, they are brilliant problem solvers.
But that backfires on us.
Yeah, completely. The issue is that they are constantly mastering a curriculum you never intended to teach. It's the double-edged sword of high intelligence.
Give me an example.
Say they refuse to eat their standard kibble one morning. You panic and immediately offer them a tastier piece of boiled chicken.
Right, because you just want them to eat something.
Exactly. But they didn't just get a better meal, they just learned a complex negotiation tactic, holding out yields higher value resources.
Or if they pull on the leash like a tiny sled dog, gasping for air, we just keep walking forward because they aren't strong enough to pull us over.
Yes, the sled dog routine.
We think it's harmless because they weigh 10 pounds, but they just learned that frantic pulling is the magical mechanism that unlocks the park.
You've got it. The mechanics of learning do not care about the size of the dog, which brings us directly to the label of small dog syndrome.
Right. What is the deal with that?
People discuss it as though it's a genetic defect, a clinical diagnosis, or some inherent personality flaw of toy breeds. The reality is that small dog syndrome is a myth.
A total myth.
Yes. It is a completely unhelpful label for a predictable pattern of learned behaviors that accumulate over time simply because a dog exists in an environment devoid of boundaries.
So it's essentially a human excuse. We slap a catchy label on the dog so we don't have to take responsibility for the fact that we let a 10-pound dog do things we would immediately correct in a 70-pound dog.
Exactly right.
I mean, we would never let a German Shepherd jump on our guests' faces or guard the sofa, but when a Pomeranian does it, we call it sassy or blame the syndrome.
We excuse the behavior because the physical consequence to the human is minimal. This syndrome develops when a dog is carried everywhere in a tote bag, instead of being allowed to walk, sniff, and independently explore the world on his own four paws.
Right, they never get to just be a dog.
Exactly. It develops when nuisance barking is repeatedly rehearsed without that recovery routine we discussed.
Yeah.
Or when pushy, demanding behaviors are met with laughter and treats.
So how do we fix it?
Well, the fix is not asserting some outdated concept of alpha dominance or using harsh physical corrections. The intervention requires structural consistency. It means providing safe, grounded exposure to the environment and establishing clear, predictable rules that the dog can rely on.
A massive piece of that structural inconsistency, and a huge reason why we excuse those behaviors, stems from the physical reality of their size.
Their tiny size, yeah.
We can physically overpower them with zero effort, which means we really need to dive into the concept of handling, and canine bodily autonomy.
This is huge. Autonomy is perhaps the most routinely violated aspect of a small dog's life. Because they are tiny and look like plush toys, they are constantly grabbed, lifted, shifted, and handled by humans without a single warning signal.
We treat them like inanimate objects that can be repositioned at our convenience.
We really do.
I always tell people, imagine if you were just standing in your kitchen making coffee, totally relaxed.
Yeah.
Suddenly, a giant, silent hand swoops down from the ceiling, wraps around your ribs, and yanks you 6 feet into the air without a word of warning.
It sounds like a horror movie.
It does. Your heart rate would explode. You would probably yell, thrash, or try to fight off whatever just grabbed you. It's an incredibly vulnerable, terrifying physical sensation.
And yet, when a Pomeranian growls or snaps when it's being suddenly scooped up by a family member, owners almost universally dismiss it as the dog having an attitude.
Like they're just being grumpy.
Exactly. We have to drastically reframe how we view a growl. Growling is not an insult. It is vital pro-social communication. A growl is a dog using its words to say, I am uncomfortable.
So what are they actually feeling?
That discomfort could be fear, it could be acute physical pain, or it could simply be profound frustration at having absolutely zero agency over what happens to their own body.
Okay, if the goal is to give them that agency, how do we practically apply that? We still have to pick them up sometimes. I mean, to put them in a car or carry them over hot pavement. What is the actionable protocol for you to stop being the giant swooping hand?
First and foremost, you install a pickup cue. Before you ever make physical contact, you say a specific word, like up or lift, and you pause for a split second.
Just a tiny pause.
Yes, that tiny pause gives the dog's nervous system a chance to brace for the physical sensation of leaving the ground. It removes the startle reflex.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Second, you have to strictly manage the humans in the dog's life. Establish non-negotiable rules for children and visitors. You invite the dog into your space, you pat your leg and let them approach, you never chase, and you never reach over their head to grab them.
And they need a place to escape too, right?
Yes. Finally, the dog must have a designated safe zone, like a bed or an open crate, where they know with absolute certainty that no human hands will touch them.
This issue of bodily autonomy seems deeply connected to grooming too. Grooming a double-coated Spitz is a massive part of their weekly routine, and I hear from so many owners that it turns into a daily wrestling match. They think the dog is just being defiant.
If grooming has devolved into a wrestling match, it indicates that subtle communication was ignored long before the brush ever came out.
Oh, interesting.
And if your dog is fiercely resisting being brushed, particularly if that resistance is a sudden behavior change, you have to look past the assumption of stubbornness.
What is it usually?
Resistance during handling very often equates to physical pain. Pomeranians have incredibly dense coats, and tiny mats that form close to the skin act like needles pulling on the epidermis when caught by a comb.
Ouch.
Right. If they fight you, they might literally be saying, "You are hurting me."
So how do you fix a grooming aversion?
The protocol involves desensitization. You practice touching all body parts, paws, ears, belly, tail, calmly and gently outside of grooming sessions, pairing that touch with high-value rewards and always stopping before the dog reaches their frustration threshold.
So that lack of physical boundary and the stress of unpredictable handling inside the home must have a compounding effect when they step out the front door.
Oh, definitely.
How does that internal overstimulation translate to their energy levels when they have to interact with the broader, much larger outside world?
The translation is direct and often explosive. Because they are kept in a state of high alert, and because they lack the confidence of grounded autonomy, Pomeranians can project an intense defensive boldness.
Like they think they're huge.
Exactly. They frequently fail to register the sheer size mismatch between themselves and the rest of the world. A 10-pound Spitz will confidently march up to a Great Dane or a speeding bicycle, puffing themselves up to manage the threat.
Which is terrifying to witness as an owner. Your immediate reaction is to panic, yank the leash, or snatch them into the air to save them.
Which, as we now know, only validates their panic and adds to the chaos.
Like the siren analogy again?
Yep. The owner's responsibility is to protect them, but you do that by utilizing distance as a training tool. You advocate for your dog's space.
You don't just force them to say hi.
No, you do not have to force on-leash greetings with giant dogs to socialize them. Socialization actually means teaching them to exist calmly in the presence of stimuli.
So just watching from afar.
You allow your dog to observe larger dogs from 30 feet away, rewarding them for remaining calm, thereby reinforcing that they are safe and do not need to take matters into their own tiny teeth.
This completely recontextualizes the frantic energy we see in the breed. The zooming around the living room, the frantic spinning at the door, the jumping.
Yes, the classic
The
zooms.
conventional wisdom is always, a tired dog is a good dog. People see a spinning Pomeranian and think, well, they have so much pent-up physical energy, I need to take them for a 3-mile run or throw the ball until their tongue hangs out.
That is so common.
But based on what you're saying about their nervous system, is it possible that exhausting them physically is actually just pouring gasoline on a fire?
You are hitting on one of the most pervasive misunderstandings in dog training. There is a profound biological difference between physical energy and mental overarousal.
So they aren't the same thing at all.
Not at all. When a dog is frantic, pacing, spinning, and unable to hold focus, their sympathetic nervous system is flooded with adrenaline and cortisol. They are in a state of fight or flight.
Wow. Okay.
They do not need cardiovascular exercise to burn off energy. They desperately need to learn how to engage their parasympathetic nervous system. That's the rest and digest state.
So the ball throwing is making it worse.
If you repeatedly play high-intensity fetch with an over-aroused dog, you aren't calming them down. You are simply building a fitter, faster, more enduring athlete who is still trapped in a state of mental panic.
That is wild. So we have to manually install an off switch in their brain. I imagine this isn't just about locking them in a quiet room. What does engaging that parasympathetic state actually look like in practice?
It requires deliberate, structured decompression. One highly effective method is mat training, where the dog is systematically rewarded for simply lying down and relaxing muscle tension on a specific rug.
So teaching them how to chill.
You are teaching them the physical posture of calmness. Another incredible tool is scent work. Sniffing is biologically taxing for a dog.
Oh, really? Just sniffing?
Yes. Processing complex odors through their olfactory bulb requires massive brain bandwidth, which forces them to slow their breathing, focus their mind, and naturally lowers their heart rate.
That's a great tip.
You also have to enforce predictable, quiet rest periods throughout the day. Spitz breeds suffer from FOMO, fear of missing out.
Oh, I know. They have to be involved in everything.
Exactly. They will stay awake to monitor you until they drop, so you have to give them permission to do nothing.
That fear of missing out ties directly into their independence, doesn't it? They were bred to be close companions, and they bond intensely to their humans.
They are classic Velcro dogs.
Right. But there's a dark side to that attachment if it isn't managed.
That deep, Velcro-like attachment is beautiful, but without balance, it becomes a severe vulnerability. They require genuine independence to avoid spiraling into distress when you inevitably have to leave the house for work or groceries.
How do you build that independence?
You build this resilience through short, low-stakes absences. You step outside for 10 seconds, then come back. You normalize your absence.
Keep it casual.
Crucially, you must keep your departures and your returns incredibly boring. If you engage in a highly emotional 20-minute farewell ritual every time you grab your keys, you are actively telling the dog that your departure is a massive, terrifying event worthy of panic.
We should note here that the data makes a strict distinction between mild distress and clinical separation anxiety. If a dog is destroying door frames, self-mutilating, or only having accidents in the house the minute you leave, we aren't just talking about tweaking a training routine anymore.
The data is unequivocal on that point. Severe panic responses require immediate professional intervention. You need a qualified veterinary behaviorist. That level of flooding in the nervous system cannot be fixed by just ignoring the dog or leaving a radio on.
Which brings us to a crucial paradigm shift that connects everything we've discussed today. We just mentioned how severe panic requires a vet, or how sudden resistance to grooming might mean painful skin mats. It highlights that we can't separate behavior from biology. Behavior and health are intrinsically linked.
Absolutely. If we pull the lens back, behavioral changes are almost always the very first subtle indicators of a medical issue. A dog's personality doesn't spontaneously alter overnight.
What should people look out for?
If your previously social spitz suddenly exhibits aggression when a larger dog approaches, if they start hesitating at the bottom of the stairs, if their appetite shifts, or if they suddenly snap when you try to click their harness on, well, those are not training regressions.
They're warning signs.
Those are massive red flags for a veterinary diagnostic. For example, snapping at a harness could indicate a cervical spine issue. Avoiding stairs could be luxating patellas, which is highly common in small breeds.
Yeah.
Pain is the primary driver of sudden behavioral shifts.
It all boils down to the reality that as an owner, you are never just hanging out. You are always constantly teaching.
Every single interaction is a data point for the dog. Whether you are intentionally shaping a behavior with high-value treats or accidentally reinforcing a behavior by laughing when they bark at the television, the dog's brain is recording the outcome.
But the practical payoff of doing this behavior work with intention is monumental. It isn't just about having a polite roommate who doesn't bark at the wind. This behavioral work is literally preventative health care.
Think about the cumulative impact over a 15-year lifespan.
Right.
A dog that has been systematically taught to tolerate bodily autonomy allows you to check their mouth easily, meaning you catch early-stage dental disease before it causes organ damage. A dog that is conditioned to enjoy calm brushing stays free of mats, preventing painful bacterial skin infection.
Wow, that really puts it in perspective.
And a dog that has been taught to walk on a loose leash rather than straining frantically against a collar is literally protecting its own fragile trachea from collapse. A dog that knows how to settle its nervous system on a mat makes a veterinary exam infinitely less stressful, allowing the vet to get an accurate heart rate and perform a thorough physical exam.
There's a brilliant conceptual framing from our research today that sums this dynamic up perfectly. It suggests barking is the first sentence. Training teaches the next one.
That framing is profound because it validates the dog's genetics while empowering the human. It acknowledges that the bark, the alert, the instinct is natural. You let them speak that first sentence.
But we don't just leave it there.
Exactly. But the training is what provides the vocabulary for what happens next, allowing them to close the loop and return to baseline.
So training and preventive care are actually the exact same conversation, just viewed through different lenses.
They are completely inseparable. Guiding a dog's psychological state is the fundamental prerequisite for protecting a dog's physical body.
Let's bring all these threads together. The ultimate goal of training your Pomeranian, or any highly alert small spitz, isn't to crush their spirit or erase their genetics. You aren't trying to mold them into a silent, perfectly obedient, decorative little ornament that sits statically in the corner of your living room.
Because that's not what they are.
Exactly. The goal is to provide a structured framework for an incredibly bright, lively, and hyper-observant companion. We want to give them the tools to confidently navigate this giant, overwhelming world, check in with you when their nervous system feels unsure, and safely settle back down into a state of rest. We want them to be exactly what they are, just the most balanced, least stressed version of it.
Achieving that balance requires us to be deeply mindful of the micro-interactions we have with them every single day. Because as we've explored, your dog's brain is constantly absorbing and adapting to your accidental reactions.
Which brings us right back to that living room couch, and to you, listening right now. We want to leave you with one final thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
We've established that your dog's behavior acts as a mirror for your own interactions. So take a moment to look at your dog's most stubborn, persistent, or frustrating habit right now and ask yourself, what does that habit actually reveal about your daily routines and the subconscious signals you're putting out into the world?